The last sunrise ending has a hidden meaning. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to look at the hidden meaning behind the ending of The Last Sunrise, especially that final sunrise, Rye's memories, and why Julian introduces himself to her again. Before we continue, here's your spoiler alert. We're going straight into the ending, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, this is where the major spoilers begin. At first, the ending can seem confusing. Rye has gone through the surgery she was terrified of, she survives, and then we see her at the beach. Julian appears, he introduces himself, and then the movie ends. There isn't a huge emotional reunion, there isn't a clear confirmation that Rye remembers everything, and there isn't a scene explaining exactly what happens to their relationship afterward. But that's actually the point. The ending is built around uncertainty, and that uncertainty connects directly to Rye's entire journey. Throughout the movie, Rye is afraid of losing control over her future. Her medical condition has already taken away some of that control. She has to think about medication, seizures, treatment, and the possibility of surgery. But the thing she fears most is losing her memories. Because memories are how Rye holds on to the people and experiences that matter to her. And Julian becomes especially important because her time with him represents something she doesn't want to lose. For the first time, Rye is really living in the moment. She's experiencing the world instead of constantly worrying about what might happen next. So when surgery threatens her memory, it feels like the ultimate sacrifice. She could survive physically, but lose the memories that made her happiest. And that's why the ending doesn't simply tell us whether she remembers Julian. Instead, it asks a much bigger question. If you lose the memories of something beautiful, does that mean the experience itself has lost its meaning? The movie seems to suggest that it doesn't. What Rye experienced with Julian changed her. Even if some details disappear, the person she became because of those experiences doesn't simply vanish. And that's where the final sunrise becomes incredibly important. The title, The Last Sunrise, initially sounds like a reference to death. Rye is worried about how much time she has left. Every sunrise can feel like another reminder that time is passing. But by the end, the sunrise has completely changed meaning. It's no longer about the end, it's about beginning again. Rye survives. She gets another morning, another opportunity to experience life, and another opportunity to make memories. That's why the final sunrise is almost the opposite of what the title initially suggests. It isn't necessarily Rye's last sunrise, it's the sunrise of a new chapter. And then Julian appears. He says, "Hola, I'm Julian." That simple introduction has a much deeper meaning. Why would he introduce himself to someone he already knows? Because Rye may not remember him. But there's another possibility. He's deliberately recreating their first meeting. When Rye and Julian originally met, they were strangers. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know they would fall in love. They simply met. Now, Julian is giving Rye the opportunity to meet him again. That's incredibly important, because he's not demanding that she remember their past. He's not asking, "Do you remember me?" He's not forcing her to prove that their relationship still exists. Instead, he's willing to start wherever Rye is. If she remembers him, then they can continue. If she doesn't, they can begin again. And if her memories are returning gradually, Julian could become part of that process. That's why the final moment is hopeful. It isn't a goodbye, it's an invitation. And this connects to another major theme of the movie. You cannot control everything that happens in life. Rye spends much of the story trying to protect herself from pain. She wants to avoid surgery because she's afraid of what it might take away. But eventually, she has to accept that there are risks she can't avoid. And Julian learns the same lesson. He can't guarantee that Rye will remember him. He can't control what the surgery does. He can't control the future of their relationship. But he can choose to stay, and that's exactly what he does. The final scene, therefore, isn't really asking us to solve a mystery. It's asking us to think about what love means when circumstances change. Would Julian still choose Rye if she couldn't remember him? The ending's answer appears to be yes. He would choose her again. And that makes his introduction so powerful. He's essentially saying that their relationship doesn't have to depend entirely on the past. They can create a future. This is also why the ending is different from a traditional romantic movie. Usually, the audience expects a clear reunion. The character remembers everything, the couple embraces, the story ends happily. But The Last Sunrise doesn't give us that certainty. Instead, it leaves Rye and Julian standing at the beginning of something unknown. And that fits the movie's message perfectly. Life itself is uncertain. Love is uncertain. Memory is uncertain. The future is uncertain. But uncertainty doesn't mean there is no hope. In fact, the sunrise represents exactly that. Every sunrise means the previous day is over, but it also means another day has started. And that's what happens to Rye. The version of her life that existed before the surgery has changed. She may have lost some memories, she may remember others. Her relationship with Julian may have to change. But her life isn't over. It's beginning again. There's also a beautiful contrast between Rye's fear and the final image. Earlier, Rye is afraid of losing everything. By the end, the movie shows us that even when something is lost, something new can still be created. That's the hidden meaning. The story isn't saying that memories don't matter, they clearly matter to Rye. Instead, it's saying that life is bigger than the memories we are able to hold on to. You can lose parts of your past and still have a future. You can forget a moment and still create another one. You can lose certainty and still choose to love. And that's exactly what Julian's final introduction represents. He's giving Rye another chance. Maybe she'll remember him. Maybe she won't. Maybe she will remember slowly. But he doesn't walk away. He starts again. And perhaps that's why the final scene is placed at the beach. The beach is where Rye and Julian's story began. Returning there creates a sense of a circle. But it isn't really a repetition. It's a reset. The first time they met, they were strangers. Now they're strangers again in some sense. But the audience knows everything that happened between them. We know what they went through. We know how much Julian cares about Rye. And we know how important their relationship became. So, what is the hidden meaning of The Last Sunrise? It's about second chances. The sunrise represents Rye getting another opportunity to live. The surgery represents her willingness to face an uncertain future. Her memories represent the parts of the past she may or may not recover. And Julian represents the possibility that love can survive even when the past becomes uncertain. That's why the ending is ultimately hopeful. Rye doesn't get a perfect resolution. She gets something more realistic. She gets another day, another sunrise, another chance to remember, and another chance to love. So when you look at that final sunrise, don't see it as Rye's goodbye. See it as the moment she finally stops counting how many mornings she has left. For the first time, she's simply looking at the morning ahead. And that's the real meaning of the ending. The Last Sunrise isn't about the end of Rye's story. It's about the beginning of whatever comes next.